Always do it on my own, so I gotta get through it. And the only thing I know is to love what I'm doing. Never give up, never slow, till I finally prove it. Never listen to the no's, I just wanna keep moving. Keep my head up when I act, head up, that's a fact. Never looking back, I'ma keep myself on track. Keep my head up, staying strong, always moving on. Feel I don't belong, tell my thoughts to move along. Push myself to be the best, die with no regrets. Live with every breath, see my message start to spread. And I had so many dreams, then you hit your teens. Life ain't really what it seems, try to find out what it means. Always do it on my own, so I gotta get through it. And the only thing I know is to love what I'm doing. Never give up, never slow, till I finally prove it. Never listen to the no's, I just wanna keep moving. Yeah, I put out all this art, it's my only medicine. Yeah, everything I do, I'm just being genuine. Yeah, I'm sick of being screwed, feel my own adrenaline. Yeah, I do just what I do, and I hope you let me in, yeah. I'm grateful, oh yeah, able, oh yeah, I'm stable, oh yeah, no label, oh yeah, you know me, I have only a path, I'm lonely, but damn, I'm going to win. I don't want no fake love, I want the real stuff. Everybody listen up, cause I'll only say it once. I'm gonna show you all the path, if you want it bad. I'm gonna show you where it's at, yeah, how you can get it back. Yeah, cause I ain't never done, I'll be number one. Working hella hard until I get just what I want, yeah. Rises like the sun, yeah, fatal like a gun. Shooter's gonna shoot and I'm gonna shoot until I won, yeah. Always do it on my own, so I gotta get through it. And the only thing I know is to love what I'm doing. Never give up, never slow, till I finally prove it. Never listen to the no's, I just wanna keep moving. Yeah, I put out all this art, it's my only medicine. Yeah, everything I do, I'm just being genuine. Yeah, I'm sick of being screwed, feel my own adrenaline. Yeah, I do just what I do, and I hope you let me in, yeah. Grateful, oh yeah, able, oh yeah, I'm stable, oh yeah, no label, oh yeah, you know me, I have only a path, I'm lonely, but damn, I'm going to win, yeah.
Okay, so people liked it, they watched it, so let's do another half. All right, here we go.
Dialogue. So
It was
please
a
stick
fraternal
around.
correction.
I receive it. If you haven't yet, please like the video. Please share it if you appreciate these deep dives into these different topics. And we'll be back real soon.
All right, so...
But even in that case, you can have a we accept all of this, all of that.
Or songs, that is why. But I think we're in a much warmer, much better place here. We're going to be doing a 15-minute cross-examination, and each followed by a 50-minute open dialogue. Now, I always feel like I need to state this. How is the cross-examination different from the dialogue? Well, in the cross-examination, the one leading the examination gets to direct the conversation where he would like to. So if he feels like his opponent is stalling or not answering the question, he can interrupt and redirect, and that's not considered rude. That's just the rules of the debate. So there we go. It's not as loud as it is in our ears.
I'm good to go?
Yeah, you ready? Already got 15 minutes.
All right, I'm good. All right, Denny, in the synodical letter of St. Sophronius of Jerusalem, accepted at the 6 ecumenical councils, Sophronius says that he attaches himself to all the letters and teachings of Leo the Great, quote, as if they issued from the mouth of the chief Peter, quote, close quote, and, quote, embraces them with all of his soul, close quote. The 6th Ecumenical Council accepts Sophronius' letter. We also read from the Formula of Hermisdas that the letters of Leo were to be accepted. At the Council of 553, amongst a slew of names, Leo comes up in all his writings. would you say that the Sixth Ecumenical Council's inclusion of Sophronius's letter commits the Orthodox Christian to the epistolary of Pope Leo?
Would you be able to reread the quotation?
Yeah, quote, as he says, he accepts the letters and teachings of Leo the Great, quote, as if they issued from the mouth of the chief Peter, close quote.
No, I would not say that it binds us in any way, because I don't think that he's saying what you think he is.
Okay, so would you say that he's saying the writings of Leo, as he understood them, were orthodox?
Yeah.
Okay, so if the council says we accept Sophronius's letter, and Sophronius's letter goes into great detail saying all the discourses, all the letters, all the teachings of Leo, he receives them as coming from the mouth of Peter. You don't think that that puts the Leonine epistolary on a very high shelf in Orthodox thinking?
Oh, it puts on an incredibly high shelf. The problem is I don't think that corpus says what you think it is.
Okay.
What you think it does.
Okay. All right. So,
But even in that case, you can have we accept all of this, all of that. And I'll give you an example, okay?
well, you would put Leo's letters on a high standing.
Well, I would, even without St. Sophronius saying that.
Right. So I'm just adding Sophronius's statement, which is explicitly clear, and you've got an ecumenical council that accepts that letter. That puts Leo's letters on a different shelf than another saint's.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's on a very different level compared to, say, like, something written by just some random bishop.
Now, if given the status of Pope Leo's writings, would it be a cause for reflection if in Leo's writings, as Bolotov and Podziewski said, along with countless other scholars, is found the essence of Vatican I ecclesiology?
That depends on what they.
I mean, it's a good question, but I feel it's like over-aiming or overkill, which could actually hurt the discussion in the long run.
I mean by the essence of it.
Okay. So what we mean by essence is where there's a logical germ that if it's expanded, it comes out to be papal supremacy.
I believe that you can take Leo's letters and you can't extrapolate that out. I don't think that's the way that they're necessarily going.
Okay.
But systems of power, systems typically go towards grabbing power.
Sure. All right. In Sermon 5, Leo the Great says that Peter continues to preside over his see in an ongoing, this is I'm quoting him, an ongoing partnership with Jesus Christ.
The fact that he's going to his books it's a bad look. I get it. I've done it. But it's a bad look.
And, quote, the solidity which
It
he
shows
received
that you're losing your cool.
from Christ the Rock has also passed to his successors, close quote. Do you agree with Pope Leo that the rock strength that Christ gave to Peter passes on to his successors from Sermon 5?
I mean, it was certainly St. Leo's hope, and that is traditionally what has been believed is possible. But, I mean, we've seen many examples of them not holding that. We even saw St. Peter himself not holding stable on numerous occasions.
Right. But Leo, in Sermon 5, he says that the solidity that was given to Peter, the apostle, passes on to his successors. Do you agree with that, yes or no?
Well, again, I would say that it's inherent, it's in the office, whether or not the office holder intends to utilize that.
So does it pass to his successors, yes or no?
It passes to his office, and the holder of that office.
Well, the person who sits in the office, does he get it?
He can't. It's there available in the office. If the holder of the office decides to, it's like baptism.
Right.
You can be baptized, but if you decide not to utilize it and live a just profligate life.
Okay, good. Yeah, we agree. In Sermon 3, Leo says that the very same solidity of faith in Peter that passes on to his successors is, quote, perpetual, close quote. And that which, quote, that which Christ instituted in Peter remains, such that whatever Rome does rightly, it is due to Peter's work and merit, whose power lives and whose authority prevails in his see, close quote. That's Sermon 3. Do you believe that endures perpetually?
Would you be able to read the quote one more time, please?
Yeah, that which Christ instituted in Peter remains.
You actually tell that he wasn't listening.
And then I have ... such that whatever is rightly done by us is due to his work and merits, Peter's, whose power lives and whose authority prevails in his see.
Well, he says, and so if anything is rightly done and rightly decreed
That's right.
by us.
Yeah, it's conditional.
And then he goes, if anything is won from the mercy of God by our daily supplications, is of his work and merits. I mean, if I do anything good, glory to God. If any of us do anything good, glory to God.
Right. So you would say this is applicable to your child?
Yeah.
Really?
Well,
So,
I mean, if my child does anything good, glory to God. I mean, if any good act comes from God, right?
Right. But these are one is an anniversary sermon on the office of the Apostle Peter in Rome. So he's talking about prerogatives that befall to the individual who sits on the Roman
successor.
The successor of Peter, right? All right. In his investigation of Leo's writings, Father John Meyendorff, in his book, it's called Imperial
Division Christian Unity.
Right. You recommended it recently.
It's a very good book. Overall.
Meyendorff said that for Leo, quote, the true center of eternal unity.
He's so bitchy.
authority had to remain, and indeed remained, as a rock embodied in the ministry of the successor of Peter in Rome, close quote. As Meyendorff giving his understanding of what Leo communicated through his epistles. Do you agree with Meyendorff, or do you disagree with Meyendorff?
I wouldn't necessarily agree with it, because I don't think that St. Leo would say you had to be in communion with a heretical successor of his.
Okay.
If we ask St. Leo, well, in the future there's going to be this guy named Honorius or this guy named Vigilius, do you have to be in communion with him? No, heavens no, absolutely not.
Okay. Do you know any Orthodox or Catholic or Protestant scholars who agree with your reading of Pope Leo?
To be entirely honest with you, I don't necessarily recall any, but I don't recall any one way or the other. What typically occurs in Orthodox scholarship is it just copies Catholic scholarship. And Protestant scholarship also has to copy Catholic scholarship. The Anglicans need the Catholic narrative to be true. In fact, all of the Reform movement needs a Catholic narrative of history to be true in order to justify the Reformation. They need it to be true as much as you do.
Yes, I agree with that. But here's a statement I want to read from a 5th century saint. We both venerate him, St. Peter Chrysologus. And this statement would encapsulate what I think is fulfilling my burden. Okay, so the question I'm going to ask you pertains to that. Eutyches reached out to St. Peter of Ravenna, Chrysologus of Ravenna, asking him what he should do about the situation that he was in. And Peter responded to him saying that he should submit to Pope Leo because, quote, the Apostle Peter, who lives and presides in his own see, offers the truth of the faith to those who ask. For we, in our zeal for peace, cannot decide questions of faith apart from the consent of the Bishop of Rome, close quote. Now, do you agree with this statement in its entirety, that the prerogative is this divine perpetuity of Peter living and judging in his see?
In the see, yes, not necessarily in the inhabitants of the see.
So the Roman see.
The Roman see.
Okay.
I mean, it's still the first see. It never ceased to be. It's just,
Right. Right. So pertaining to that see, Pope Gelasius says, the apostolic see has often had the liberty, facultas, without a synod preceding it, without a synod preceding it, to loose those whom a synod has unjustly condemned, and also, if necessary, to condemn others without the convocation of a synod. And he gives as an example, the apostolic see by its authority, quote, condemned Dioscorus, and it dissolved the godless synod, that's Ephesus 4:49, and ordered on its own authority, Chalcedon, close quote. So,
I'm sorry, which letter is that from?
So this is a letter.
This is letter 1?
No, this is letter 13.
Okay.
Well, it's not in there. It's unfortunately Neil and Alan didn't incorporate
it's
that.
similar here in letter 1. It's stated.
Well, it's similar, but I'm reading from Dvornik's translation of Epistle 13 and PL 59.67. It's not in that book, I can assure you. But so he's saying that he doesn't need a synod proceeding, that the apostolic see has had the liberty to do this by the synod. Do you believe that?
I believe what he says, but I don't believe your interpretation.
Okay, so what does he mean by not having a synod preceding?
Well, in those quotes earlier, he doesn't need a synod to condemn someone. He can do it according to the form of a previous council, like Chalcedon.
Right, but he says without a synod preceding. So it's in other words, he gives as examples situations that don't have a preceding log of a council.
Can you read the entire quote again, please?
Well, he says, the apostolic see has often had the liberty, without a synod preceding it, to loose those whom a synod has unjustly condemned, and also, if necessary, to condemn others without the convocation of a synod.
Okay, so I think letter 1 clarifies it.
Okay.
That when he says preceding, he's talking about the Pope holds a synod, and then from there, as the head of the synod, issues a decree. He says, although the human law of the 30 years cannot be abrogated, that St. Athanasius was not thereby condemned by the Synod of the East because that see did not agree to it, or St. John Chrysostom, or St. Flavian. Let's see, there's no verb from that. See, okay, so maybe it's another letter I'm thinking of.
Well, feel free to just respond to this. What does he mean? Why is he trying to say that he doesn't need a synod in order to loosen or condemn?
Well, he doesn't need that because the Sardican canon state he doesn't need it.
Right, but his interpretation of Sardica could be different than ours. So the question is, why is he excluding the need of a synod?
Well, we know his interpretation of Sardica because I read it during the rebuttal.
Right, and he says his interpretation is coexisting with this, where he doesn't need a synod.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can go to the Pope and you can say I was condemned.
Right,
so,
and he sees that as a Sardican action.
Right, so Bishop Eric goes to Pope Matt Fradd and says, I was condemned by a synod held by Patriarch Ubi Petrus. What do I do? And Pope Matt Fradd goes, well, hold up, you need a retrial. That's what the Pope was. He was a review court. He could decide whether or not you went to trial, whether you deserved a retrial. That's what he's talking about.
Yeah, but he does say that without a synod preceding it and even after the convocation of a synod. So he's saying he has the power to absolve sentences that happened in a synod without a synod preceding related to that question.
Yeah, that's the Sardican canon.
Right, but see, that Sardican canon involves the ability to act without a synod. That's what Dvornik says in his book, 118, in the book Rome and Byzantium. And I'll ask you if you agree with this. He says, this Petrine power extended also to the decision of synods and was not bound by them, close quote. So in other words, he's saying without the convocation of a synod, he's able to loosen or condemn.
Yeah, I mean, they can come to him and they can say I was condemned. Do I deserve a retrial?
yeah,
And he goes, yeah.
Okay, very good. Okay, so let's 1 minute. You said.
Yep.
You can, Eric. You can take as much time as you'd like.
No, that's okay.
No, really.
All right, do you believe that at the Vatican Council in 1870 that the Pope did anything exclusively by himself?
No, because the bishops knew that he would if they said no.
Okay.
He just dissolved the council.
But you would agree that it was a council, there was votes, there was deliberation.
Yeah.
But do you believe that there's evidence that the people there believed in Vatican I, the supremacy of the Pope, infallibility of the Pope?
By the end of it, that the majority, yes.
Okay, so then you can have a
That's a big admission.
belief in the papal supremacy without a specific singular action of a Pope.
Well, of course, there's two levels of ecclesiology in the Catholic Church. There's a conciliar theology, and then there's an autocracy.
Right. So when you require me to prove popes acting in a certain capacity in the first millennium, that's not my burden. My burden is to prove that they believed that. Just like you just said, you believe Vatican I holds the papal infallibility and papal supremacy, and yet it was done in the context of a council.
Well, that's because they teach those. So
That's right. So they make those
define
claims,
it.
yes.
All right, so now it's your time, Ubi. You can direct the conversation wherever you want. You're welcome to interrupt if you see fit. And again, that's not considered rude. That's just part of the cross-examination. So whenever you begin, you'll have 15 minutes.
Let me give myself here 1 moment. Okay. In 518, how long had it been since the bishop and clergy of Constantinople had been in communion with Rome?
How long has it been?
How long had it been? The year 518.
Well, cases went out in 484.
Yeah, so 34 years. So speaking of the ecumenical patriarch John and all the clergy of Constantinople in 518, many of whom had been clergy in 44, right? And with whom Rome had been in schism for 34 years at this point, the emperor Justin states, we have decided that the requests of these men should be referred to your beatitude inasmuch as they have always been established as lovers of unity. I mean, for 34 years, these people have not been in unity, but they're described as always loving unity. I mean, do you find that somewhat odd?
Well, it's pleasantries. Yeah, it's pleasantries.
Flowery language.
Flowery language.
That's very okay. Prior to Ephesus 2 in 449, there had been a schism between the prelates of Rome and Alexandria, correct? Over St. John Chrysostom?
Yes.
Okay. Lasted quite a while. It was quite nasty, right?
Yes.
Okay. And it was led by two saints, St. Theophilus and, thank you, St. Theophilus and I believe it was Pope Innocent. St. Hormisdas writes, writing to St. Hormisdas.
I brought these things up yesterday tangentially, and they dove a little bit more into it. I'm interested to see if this actually turns into something or this goes nowhere.
The Alexandrian clerics Dioscorus and Hieramon state, venerable saints of the Church of the City of Rome and Alexandria have always kept the peace, not only in the correct and stainless faith, but which the homily of salvation was preached, by which, venerable saints of the Church of the City of Rome and of Alexandria have always kept the peace, not only in the correct and stainless faith, by which the homily of salvation was preached among them, but also in divine ministry. Had always been, there's always?
No.
No, now it's flowering language, okay. Had Justinian been benevolent towards the Nicaea rioters when he killed tens of thousands of them? I'm not saying it wasn't called for, I'm just saying, would you describe?
Those are very bad points. There's political writing going on there. So he has to be politically illiterate to not get that that's political writing.
Described as benevolent.
I hesitate.
You hesitate? Okay. Wow, that is really...
They're not hearing it.
Okay. Do you think that the Emperor Justinian was benevolent towards Vigilius? He was pretty hard on him, wasn't he?
He was hard, but for the structure of the time, it was diplomatic with some harshness, yes.
Okay, so he's pretty harsh on him, right? So, for by relaying false information, you brought the mind of the most Christian prince to the point where his clemency, which has always been benevolent towards his enemies, was seriously incited against us. Vigilius writes that. I believe it was Vigilius writes that. So he says always. He's always been he's always been benevolent and kind. I mean, he doesn't strike me as that. Justinian strikes me as sort of an educated but rough, highly educated, but ultimately he's from a rough background. Did Theodore of Mopsuestia die in communion with the church, or had he been a stranger from the church prior to his death?
I think questions were raising, but there was no official sentences on Theodore.
Yeah. Pope Vigilius. I also anathematize the doctrines of Theodoret, and I anathematize Theodore, who was bishop of Mopsuestia, holding that he was always...
This is a really dumb point. He's just going to keep on bringing on different times that the word has been used differently in different circumstances. This gets you nowhere. The fact that expression, hyperbole, and idiom exist doesn't change the fact that sometimes you use this word. The word is used literally. The distinction comes on when we mean it literally and when we don't mean it literally. Also, just very bluntly, it doesn't even work because while the Pope is always infallible, not everything that the Pope says is infallible, only when he says things as the Pope. And only when he says things that have to do with morals or teaching of the church. So there's a lot of caveats before you can get to the point. So this is bad. The ref's always the ref of the game, even if the ref isn't blowing the whistle. Do you know what I mean?
Always a stranger to the churches and enemy of the Holy Fathers. Now, lest someone say, well, no, okay. He doubles down on a letter to the Empress Theodora, stating, I also anathema.
Like I said, this is just terrible. So when a ref blows the whistle before the game, he's not actually calling a foul. He's just blowing the whistle. Even though it's the same whistle, and it's the same guy or girl, and it's on the same field. The context is what gives you the meaning.
Matthias Theodore, who was Bishop of Mopsuestia, as always a stranger to the church and an enemy to the Holy Fathers. Okay, how many heretics had sat on the throne of Constantinople prior to Nestorius?
I know there's a few.
Yeah. St. Celestine writing to the clergy of Constantinople. For as you know, up till now, you have had priests, meaning bishops, and priests or bishop. For as you know, up till now, you have had priests powerful in teaching holiness, who never departed from the traditions of the fathers and directed the church of God in utter tranquility. You think that's correct?
Not literally.
Yeah, okay. By the mid-5th century, how many popes had like heretical views?
Yeah, this is a hotly debated issue. So, I mean, there's questions related to the pontificate of Liberius and Felix, but there's both sides. Yeah.
Okay. Theodora, you had mentioned this letter.
Yes.
Okay. For that holy see, speaking of Rome, has precedence over all churches in the world for many reasons, and above all for.
But again, he's Orthodox, so the Virgin Mary is always a virgin, even after she gives birth. Even after she gives birth, she's always a virgin. Even after marriage, she's always a virgin. The church is always holy, no matter how many sinners make up the body of the church. Always holy. Truly, truly. Always, forever. Not just always, but always forever. So, you're not only using the wrong examples, but you're making the point that you don't understand that there's different contexts for these words.
This, that is free from any taint of heresy, and that no bishop of heterodox opinion has ever sat upon its throne, but has kept the grace of the apostles undefiled. And do you think he's correct? I mean,
unless he elsewhere condemns another pope.
Okay. So as you had mentioned, maybe he didn't know. I mean, sounds like he's out in the boondocks when he writes. I mean, can the constitutions of the church be destroyed?
Constitutions?
Yeah.
His smugness and arrogance doesn't help his case at all.
Depends on what century you're referring to constitution. The constitutions then, no patristic man, I would say, would ever admit that could be destroyed.
Okay. St. Symmachus to the Eastern bishops. But if the verdicts on the grounds that they are weakly established are neglected without danger, the substance of our credulity abides without any strength, while our ancient constitutions are always destroyed by successive innovations. Well, obviously.
So I felt like Ibarra's questions were ineffective, but I only thought so because of the fact that I thought maybe he was warming up, or maybe I was warming up to get into it. But hearing Irby's, they're both ineffective. I mean, this is just pointless. You've already made this point, and it wasn't effective. So hammering down on a point that wasn't effective doesn't make it any more effective. You're just stressing a point that didn't land.
Obviously, this is just flowery language. This is just how they spoke, right? Eutyches. What role did he play in Ephesus 431? Or rather, the lead up to it. The lead up to it, I should say.
Eutyches?
Yeah.
Well, he's a court man. He had the ear of the imperial power.
He was the emperor's confessor.
I am very glad I'm not asked that question, because I wouldn't know who that was. I would be like,
Right.
But would you say that, like...
So he had influence in assuaging imperial directions.
Okay. Would you say that early on, I mean, because he was obviously senile by Chalcedon. I mean, well, by really 448. I mean, wouldn't you say, like St. Leo says, he's a befuddled old guy, he's losing it, you know? I hope I'm that charming when I'm that old, you know? Well, actually, no, I don't. I don't hope I'm here, yeah. But he was Orthodox at one point. Eutyches. He was a big deal. He's a hardcore Cyrillian. Okay, so we have this quotation from Saint Leo. He says, "Now into this unwisdom fall they who, finding themselves hindered from knowing the truth by some obscurity, have recourse not to the prophets' utterances, not to the apostles' letters, nor to the injunctions of the gospel, but to their own selves. And they thus stand out as a master of error because they were never disciples of truth. For what learning has Eutyches acquired about the pages of the New and Old Testament? Who has not even grasped the rudiments of the creed," right? Because he's talking about the homoousios, right? So he states that, he talks about this group, but they've never been disciples of truth, and he lumps Eutyches in with them. It sounds fairly odd. Eutyches was a guy who trumped up a lot of support for St. Cyril, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Does the Catholic Church follow St. Augustine in all things?
No.
No. What are some things where they don't follow him?
Infant damnation. His view on predestination, I think, today would not be.
There is no church father that we follow 100%. Period. There are many church fathers who we follow in concert when all their voices are speaking together, which is, again, something that Dan has a little trouble understanding. So,
Be welcomed in the Catholic Church.
What about ensoulment?
Univocality, when it's done through voices in concert, is something that Dan and a few of the other big guys don't seem to get.
No.
He believed in delayed ensoulment,
right?
Which forced him to hold some very odd beliefs about, for example, he believed abortion prior to ensoulment was not homicide. Which was, St. Jerome, I believe, was on the same page. If you compare that to St. Basil the Great, who goes, it doesn't matter, it's all homicide. So in the correspondence of Pope St. Hormisdas with the Scythian monks, Pope Hormisdas makes clear to them that the Roman Church does not accept St. Augustine's views on grace. So,
again, I'm not sure where he's going to go with this, but let's just assume he's saying, well, see, if you're saying that this is right because these guys said it was right, but here are times that you've said that it's wrong, how do you decide? All this is equivocation, and there's another term that I can't remember right now, but he's like, okay, so all this times it's not literal, and then, but that doesn't discount that the word can be used literally. And now he's saying, well, here's all the times you didn't agree with them. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that we don't agree with them on other things. There can be someone I don't get along with that I don't enjoy, and they can say, I really like cheese pizza. Guess what? I really like cheese pizza too. So I agree with him there. So this is ridiculous. This is not, none of these points are good points. This is like a child or a teenager yelling at an older teenager like, well, you're a hypocrite. Like, who cares? We're all adults here. Like, what is this guy doing?
Predestination, grace. And I wish I had the citation for that letter. I confess I actually don't have it.
Can you say that again? Hormisdas' letter?
In a letter to the Scythian monks. Yeah, he says that he goes, you guys are wrong. We don't have to accept St. Augustine's teachings on grace. And it's in a paper by John Pereira called John Maxentius and the Scythian. I'm familiar with it. I tried to pull it up so I get the actual citation. I apologize.
That's right.
Yeah, but we don't even follow everything that every pope has said. There are things that popes have said that Catholics disagree with. So, again, this is assuming papal supremacy means something different than what it means, and papal infallibility means something different than what it means. You're extending the implied definition to a ludicrous extreme and saying, see, it doesn't work at the far extreme of lunacy. Yeah, no shit, nothing does. This is not good argumentation.
I believe it was a venial sin for couples to come together outside of fertile periods, which would make natural family planning absolutely unacceptable. But here we have this Session 1 of Constantinople too. We further declare that we hold fast to the decrees of the four councils and in every way follow the holy fathers: Athanasius, Hilary, Basil, Gregory the Theologian, Gregory of Nyssa, Ambrose, Theophilus, John Chrysostom of Constantinople, Cyril, Augustine, Proclus, Leo, and their writings on the true faith. Now you might look at this and go, well, okay, they wrote, but all these authors thought they were writing on the true faith. So did the Fifth Council follow St. Augustine's views on grace? No. They didn't comment on it, but they wouldn't have.
Again, it's all the voices in concert working together. It's that voice that comes out when they're all together, including what we get when the paradoxes or contradictions, apparent contradictions happen. This is how it works with the Bible. This is how it works with the Church Fathers. This is how it works with any group. If we're talking about what does Congress think about this? And you see the votes, and it's like 3 abstained, 40 did this, and then 100 did this. And then everyone else wasn't there. Yeah, that's still Congress's opinion. Even if they won with only 100 votes, and most of the people weren't there for the vote, and three that were there abstained. Yeah, Yeah, it's still Congress's opinion. Now, you can get pedantic and be like, well, what about the majority view versus the minority view? It doesn't matter. You have law that comes out of Congress, and you're going to refer to it as this is what Congress thinks. Even though there are members in Congress that don't think that. You're being insane to try to pigeonhole language in this way.
I mean, did they follow his teachings on delayed ensoulment? Did they follow his teachings on basically thinking that abortion before ensoulment was a homicide? I'm sure militant Thomas, by the way, is having an absolute heart attack hearing me talk about St. Augustine.
Can I answer that?
Sure.
Okay. So what I would say is that it's true that the verbiage used, that we accept all their writings on the Christian faith, they have no time to meticulously go through and think, edit out what they don't accept and what they do accept. But what I would say is Augustine's name up there, Leo's name up there, the rest.
No. Before he does what he's going to do, let's look at the Bible, okay? The Bible says there was camels in, I don't know if it's Arabia or wherever the heck, when there wasn't. The Bible says that there was a talking donkey. The Bible says that Jonah lived in a well. The Bible says that, I don't know, Nazareth or Bethlehem existed in a time or place when it didn't. What's another good one? There's another one. I don't know. It gives the wrong king in different places in the story. Like just the wrong king's in charge, either in Ruth or Susanna or something like that. It's the wrong king. Okay? And you scared me that time. And this goes on with, I think, I don't know if it's with Egypt or with Babylon, but there's, again, they just get the wrong king for the wrong area. So what? We still call it infallible. It's the atheist, which no one of us three here are atheists. It's the atheists who say, well, that's not how that works. You said that it was infallible, therefore every single word must be true scientifically. And we're like, no. Every word has to match exactly what history shows today. No, history as we understand it today is going to change in 100 years. History as we understood it 100 years ago is saying something different than what we're saying today about history. That ball is going to keep on moving. This is our standard. And our standard says this, even though it doesn't match with current history, with current understanding of history. So what? That's not what we're going. We're not going to the Bible for a history lesson. We're not going to the Bible for a, for a science lesson or for a math lesson. Okay, so what are we doing? Why are we reading this thing? And now you're playing this same game that the atheists play with this tome and with these synod decrees. This is ridiculous. This is not how language works. This is literally not how language works. If you spoke like this, people would think you're some kind of strange robot.
Those men were prominently known for in their writings. I think they're committing themselves to that.
So and St. Augustine was an amazing saint. I love him.
Yeah.
But I mean, he had mistakes. He would have been the first to admit that. I mean, had he been confronted, he would, yeah. But yeah, they're tying it to the essence. It's a generality. It's just being generalized. By the year 553, what had the Emperor Justin done that, in your opinion, had not preserved the peace of the Church and Orthodox doctrines?
Justin or Justinian?
Justinian.
Okay.
I apologize. My eyesight is not as good as it used to be.
A lot of people don't realize that Justin came before Justinian.
Right, he was his uncle, yeah.
So what's the question about that?
By the year 553, what had Emperor Justinian done, Emperor Saint Justinian done, that, in your opinion, had not preserved the peace of the Church
Even if I knew that, right now I wasn't thinking of that, so that's news to me.
and Orthodox doctrines?
Well, I think that the way that he manhandled the hierarchy in getting the edict against 3 chapters passed was, I do think it was circumventing the liberty of the Church.
Yeah, and he was almost as brutal in getting the 3 chapters condemnation passed as getting the Libellus of Hormisdas.
He was. Yeah.
He was very brutal. If you read the Syriac accounts, it's pretty intense. Council of Constantinople II. There has now been plainly revealed the mind pleasing to God of the pious and most serene emperor, who has always done and does everything to preserve Holy Church and the Orthodox doctrines, and who sent the documents that have just been read.
Ibada has to be smart enough to see that he's trying to lay a trap for him. If he's not, my opinion of Ibada is going to go down a lot, because I mean, it's clearly setting up a trap. He's building up all this just to say something to tear it all down. So, I mean, you got to push back. And so far, you haven't done any pushback.
Speaking of Virgilia, the condemnation of 3 chapters, and who sent the documents that have just been read and which themselves show, as has escaped no one, I love that, that the Holy Church of God was formed from the beginning to the impiety of these chapters. And by the way, for all...
And again, if you're going to hold this standard, Adam and Eve talked to a snake. Where did Cain's children come from? Who was Cain's wife? Who did Adam's son marry? Where are these other people that he's scared of? This destroys the biblical narrative. You are a Bible-believing Christian. This is not a good way to do this type of literary analysis, or in this case, literary takedown of a synod decree that you disagree with. This is bad commentary. I don't want to use exegesis because we're not talking about the Bible, but this is bad. This is bad commentary. This is not how literary analysis works. You're losing the meaning of the words that you are referencing.
For all the citations, I will post this with the citations on the website in the coming days. I mean, it seems kind of odd that they just like, it's a lot of always, it's a lot of never, it's a lot of absolute statements. I mean, I don't think these guys are just...
Okay, so again, that's just how they speak. So on this channel, you can find it. I read the Council of Trent. And when you read through the anathemas, I mean, it just sounds horrific. It sounds like, wow, they're going to slaughter him. And then the Protestants respond with, hey, you're going to slaughter us. We don't want to do this. And then the bishops answer back like, no, we're being loving. We're being parenting. We're acting like fathers. We're showing you what proper discipline is. Now that you know that you could be punished, now you can come back and you can stop complaining about our practices. And they're like, no, we're not going to do that. This is the way that the bishops have spoken for a very long time. And at some point, they didn't get the memo that people stop talking in absolutes in this way and stop taking it as a joke and they start taking it the way that Irby's taking it. And that's a problem.
Disingenuous. It was just how they were speaking. Wouldn't you agree?
That's
okay.
right, yeah.
And taking into consideration that there had been popes who held views that were heretical. I mean, don't you think that cheapens the See of Rome always in Hormisdas?
Well, it all depends, right? Because they also use language like that in reference to Christ, Mary, the church.
Right, but in this case, they're talking about historical events, and Hormisdas...
No. What did you just do? What did you just do? You just mythicized the Bible. You just mythicized the Bible. In this case, they're talking about historical events. The Bible's historical events. If you're a Christian, if you're a Catholic, if you're an Orthodox, you believe the Bible's historical. Look at where what is it when atheists argue like Christians, or when Christians argue like atheists, or when Protestants argue like atheists? Look at what you're doing, man. You're not just tearing down papal decrees and synods that you already disagree with. You're hurting the credibility of the Bible, because this exact same framing and exact same critique used against a book that you think of as true would just start shredding papers. I mean, we're just knocking through entire sections of the Bible and calling them false now if you're going to hold the standard consistently.
is talking about historical events.
Sure, but when he ties it into promises of the Scripture, then the application has to be real. It's not special pleading, because it would be special pleading to say, well, they generalize and they can't be taken literally.
Which, by the way, a lot of the better arguments from Protestantism turns into, well, that's just special pleading against the Christian apologists. So Abada is perfectly on par here to throw this right into Irby's face, except he's doing it too gently.
In all these other writings. Therefore, whatever they say about the church, Christ, Mary, the saints, also has to be.
Again, in this case, they're talking about history, and Hormisdas is talking about history.
Right, but divine history. It's talking about what the Holy Spirit has done through the churches.
Right, and these guys are talking about what the Holy Spirit has done through the churches. Always, always, always.
That's right.
So, I mean, okay, so in your
1
case...
minute remaining.
Oh, thank you. So in this case, I mean, when taking into account that there had been heretical popes, I mean, I don't see how you can maintain that the always there should be the exception.
Yeah, we don't. I mean, look, I believe Honorius was a condemned heretic, and I believe Vatican I.
Right. Well, I'm just saying earlier then, there had been popes who were heretics, so the See of Rome had not always been free of the taint.
I don't know if Hormisdas would have actually believed that the heretic sat on the throne. I don't know.
Okay. So in that case, he was just wrong. Perhaps.
Perhaps. Yeah.
All right. I'm done. Thank you, Derek.
Or they weren't heretics. Or the way they were defining heretics doesn't work for the way that history develops.
All right. Thank you very much, fellas. We are going to move into our
Not we, but you two.
50-minute discussion.
55
Ubi,
minutes.
I know you've been looking forward to having this conversation. Eric, I know you have as well.
Is it 55 or 50?
I'll tell you in a second. So I would like to begin by asking a question, and then I want to let you guys free range. Okay. The question is,
I'm sorry.
it's okay. Steelman each other's position. We'll start with you, Ubi. Steelman Eric's position. Eric, I'll have you then steelman Ubi's, and then I'll let you, and then we'll continue on with the 50-minute. And if it starts to get into the weeds, I'll interrupt, but I hope not to. I'll let you guys have this time on your own. Go for it, Ubi.
See, that was missing in the modern day debate, and I just had to yeet a comment because they got a little nasty in a way that I'm not okay with. But yeah, like that was part of the problem with the modern day debate is that the moderator, once they saw them going way off track, he didn't try to pull them back at all. He didn't try to pull them back until an hour in, and then he only did it once. Like it wasn't. He was not a good moderator. Matt is like, no, look, if you go off into the reeds, I'm going to pull you back in. That's good. Keep him on topic. That's the job. Not just to keep him friendly and not just to keep him moving forward. Keep him on topic.
Okay, so Eric's position is that of Vatican I, which is that the Catholic Church can work on a conciliar level or it can work on an autocratic level. Ultimately,
keep them interrupting each other and all that kind of stuff. But yeah.
The See of Rome and its inhabitant are different people.
Moderate.
The inhabitant of the See of Rome, or the holder of the See of Rome, receives prerogatives that St. Peter lives continually in the successors in the sense that he keeps them from going astray.
I love this thing that Matt does, which is where he has the other side. He started doing this a while back. He did it like as a lark, or he saw it somewhere else and then did it as a lark. But it's really good. I'm glad that he keeps doing this. Have the opponents still man each other's position. That's a great move. Except that it needs to be qualified with, then you have to ask the other guy, did he get it correct?
Eric's position is that there will be absolute chaos if we do not have this figure who can, as they see necessary, step in and sort things out. Would you say that's an accurate assessment of your position?
Yeah.
Okay. Should I keep going, or
If that's sufficient, feel free to give yours.
I think Steelman, his position, I would say that
things out? There will be absolute chaos in the sense of the See of Rome, autocratic level. Eric's position is that of Vatican I, which is that the Catholic Church can work on a conciliar level or it can work on an autocratic level. Ultimately, that the See of Rome and its inhabitant are different people, but that the inhabitant of the See of Rome, or the holder of the See of Rome, receives prerogatives that St. Peter lives continually in the successors in the sense that he keeps them from going astray. Furthermore, Eric's position is that there will be absolute chaos if we do not have this figure who can, as they see necessary, step in and sort things out. Would you say that's an accurate assessment of your position?
Yeah.
Okay. Should I keep going, or
if that's
I think I think I disagree with. If that's an accurate representation of Eric's position, then I disagree with Eric. Just to be really blunt, I think the Pope is a legitimate position, and that the Pope's position was established by Jesus, and that's enough to make it legit. I don't think we need to worry about what other accretions or political developments happen to it after its creation. It's still created by Jesus. It's still an office created by God. Therefore, I'm good with it, regardless of how legitimate or illegitimate its global power is the wrong word, but its material power might be. Its spiritual power is protected by God. So that's enough for me.
sufficient, feel free to give yours.
At least if you believe the narrative of the Bible.
Steelman, his position, I would say that papal infallibility seems to be put up as this ultimate security. Kind of like when the Brink salesman, or whatever company is popular now selling home security, they come and they advertise security, and they say, oh, if you buy this package, this line will never be crossed. And so papal infallibility does come out and it advertises itself as this security. And yet, like Denny brought up, he brought up, how is the church today looking? How is this principle of unity looking? Catholics are up against the wall and trying to show, well, yeah, the line seems to have been crossed here, but infallibility is still true, because if you get a few magnifying glasses, you could see how the actual criterion has not been falsified. And I would say that, to Steelman Ubi's position, papal infallibility, if it's going to be a gift of security to the church, should be unmistakable and pristinely clear, never open to suspicion. And yet, we do, as Catholics, we do have to come up with explanations. Granted, we do that with Scripture, we do that with everything, but I do think that or I'm sorry, Denny. Get
You can call me both. I've been called horrible names before, so I'm okay.
I do think it's Denny's prerogative to demand the corresponding clarity. We want Vatican I to be clear in history. We want it to be unmistakable. So to push it, say, hey, look, you guys have this autocrat to help you guys, right? All right, so where's he doing it? Yeah, so I think that's a stalemate.
Well, I'll let you guys go after it.
That's not necessarily. In terms of the debate on papal infallibility and universal ordinary jurisdiction, yes.
But they're not exactly debating infallibility, so I think Ibada's slightly missing the point.
Absolutely, they need to be pristine clear.
Yeah,
they have to be. I think that there's just too many. I think that it's a runaway train as well.
Yeah,
and I don't think it's supported by the scriptures. I don't think it's supported by the councils. I don't think it's supported by the writings.
Yeah. Well, I think something that you want to talk about and I want to talk about is what is the burden on my side? What is the burden? Because I'll be honest with you. I haven't listened to all of your recordings on me.
I wouldn't expect you to, honestly.
Well, it's mainly because, and I know it's not your voice, and no offense to the guy who was speaking, but it was hard to follow him, so I just couldn't ever finish. But
that was probably due mostly to my writing style.
Yeah. Anyhow, I noticed that you say, well, give me an example. Vatican I says that the Pope has these rights, these privileges, these prerogatives. Show me the examples. And so I would say that there are examples all throughout history, because when a Pope...
My phone's about to die, and I have to call my wife, ex-wife, I don't know what to call her anymore. I have to call the person I'm involved with right after this debate is over. So I'm going to go plug in my phone before it dies. I'll be right back. And I'm going to also put the nasal spray in before I start having an issue.
Answered an appeal, ratified a council, wrote a tome, whatever. Those are acts of the successor of St. Peter, gilded
Again,
with the
we are
authority
at
given to him by
1.5 speed, and he's talking this slowly.
Christ, which I don't believe is delegated to him, don't believe is mediated to him by canonical law, although the canons do reflect it. And so when you ask, hey, Eric, give me an example, I can give you an example of the Council of 681. That's there you see the papacy in action. Oh, but he's not doing it all by himself. It doesn't matter, because what matters is what they believed about his position. Just like in Vatican I, you admitted that the Pope didn't come out and say, okay, everybody shut up, I'm going to make an ex cathedra decree, right? They voted, he allowed it to go for months, they went back and forth, they were voting on whether they should condemn certain books or not.
I don't see any reason to deny development and the rise of power and the political struggles that happened between the Pope and other powers, like, for instance, the Empress of Alexandria. The Empress of Corinth. Is it Corinth? Constantinople. Whatever. Greek Empress. Like, that happened. So there's no reason to deny that. Whether or not Augustine understood that the other bishops viewed Rome as special when he requested that they called the meeting, the Council of Nicaea, really doesn't matter, because it's the bishops who were voting who would have held the Pope as the seat of Peter as having a higher status and could tie break anything that needed to be tide broken. Because none of them needed to be tide broken, they didn't have to use that power. So, I mean, this asking, was Augustine aware of Peter, is like, it's irrelevant. Asking if this council, which in its writings, which in itself says that Rome is special, did they understand that Rome was special? Well, they wrote that Rome was special. So yes, Like that, it just. Why are we not taking people at what they say? That's what I don't understand what Irby's doing here. If they said it, they meant it, unless they take it back later. But these are dead people, so like they never took it back in their lifetime. So what are we arguing about? They had a whole lifetime to say, yeah, you know the thing where we said, you know, we want to be special like Rome is special because they're able to make decrees that not only affect their territory but other people's territory, and we kind of like to do the same thing. We didn't mean that. We were just, you know, we were just joshing. In actuality, we didn't think the Pope actually had the ability, or Rome had the ability, to make pronouncements to other patriarchates and territories, even though they did, and we listened to them. But we just listened to them out of some weird obligation because of what we said, but we didn't actually mean what we said. So really, it was all a mistake. That never happened. So what are you arguing about?
And yet you have this unanimity, near unanimity, and the Pope come together and they make a judgment on whether papal supremacy and infallibility is true in a conciliar.
I think defining papal infallibility and defining papal supremacy was a mistake. I think it's real. I think it exists. I agree that it exists and that it's real. But I think defining it out of desperation because you were upset about the Protestants leaving, I think was a bad call. Because once it's defined, then we got to look back and say, well, was it always defined this way? And obviously it wasn't always defined the way that we define it now. Did it always exist? Yes. Is the papal office of today the exact same papal office in expression of the medieval period? No, that was a military papal office. Is it the same as before the Vatican City, before the Papal States? No, because then it became a political office. Okay, so is it the same office as when he was competing for authority with an empress who got ahead of herself and did a lot of crazy stuff with her kids? No. Was it the same papal office that existed before, in expression, as before the Pope talked down the Mongol horde and Attila and did all this cool stuff that made him have prominence in the world over? No, obviously that affected the way that people think about the Pope because he was able to save the world from the scourge of humanity. So whether you're talking about Genghis Khan, whether you're talking about, is it Genghis Khan or Attila the Hun, whoever it is who tried to conquer Europe, and the Pope turned away. So every single time the Pope's office develops, you can call that a change, or you can call it growth. I think most Catholics prefer to think of it as growth. Development happens. That doesn't mean that the original office didn't exist, and that also doesn't mean that the original expression of the office isn't valid just because we have a different way of expressing it now, or because he's now taken on more hats and more roles. When Peter was Pope in Jerusalem, he was serving under the Bishop of Jerusalem, which was James. He was serving under Jesus, who was Jesus. So yeah, he was the leader of the apostles, but Jesus was there. You know, like, I mean, this is crazy. Like, at some point, he had to found Rome. In other words, he had to be martyred in Rome. If there was no martyrdom in Rome, then he isn't the Pope. He has to be martyred in Rome for him to be the Pope of Rome. So yeah, that's a development. The recognition of that is a development. Yeah. There was a church, a home church, before Peter and Paul came to Rome. It's in the Bible. So at one point, that church wasn't the most important church until it was. This is not amazing stuff here. The fact that people who don't want to accept the Pope's supremacy make it act like, oh, well, if there's any development, then it's untrue. No. Always and forever still works, even if there's development along the way.
Your way.
Okay, if I may interject.
Yeah, please.
Okay. So, 1854, what happened then?
The dogmatization of the I can't remember, is the Assumption? No, I think it's the Immaculate.
Assumption was in the 50s.
That's right. It's the Immaculate Conception. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so the bishops knew that it was Catholic teaching that that the Pope could make ex cathedra decrees when they met together in 1870, 71, right?
Yeah, but bishops believed good Christology before Chalcedon.
Well, some of them.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason they had clerical advisors. That, But so the bishops at Vatican I did understand that it was a Catholic teaching. So it wasn't like they thought, well, the Pope just has to make an ex cathedra statement about ex cathedra. That'd really be cutting off the branch he's sitting on. But Pius IX was a very precocious person, and so he went ahead and did it. And then went, oh, geez, people aren't really liking this. Okay, well, we'll call a council. There was hot debates about it. So in other words, so it sounds like what you're saying overall, that say this act of the Pope ratifying a council is an act of infallibility?
No, but it is an act of the immediate, direct, and universal authority given to Peter and his successor.
So it's
an expression of authority, sure.
So by showing examples of conciliarism, you're proving Vatican I.
As long as there's details about his activity, yeah. So, because look, you even admitted that Vatican I. How do you know the people there believed in papal supremacy and infallibility? You just said it. You said because that's what they taught. Mm-hmm. That's what they.
A voter shouldn't be trying to convince him. Debates don't convince the opponent. He shouldn't be trying to convince him. This is a mistake. It sounds good, but this is a mistake.
Taught, right?
Well, that's what they taught.
Or taught. In other words, that's what they decreed, right? Mm-hmm. And yet, if you take a fine-tooth comb and if you've got this very fixed maximal criteria, the Pope has to be doing things alone by himself, and it has to make it clear that he's not asking for help. He doesn't incorporate the compound of head and members. He's doing everything by himself. And if I don't see that, then we don't have evidence of papal supremacy and infallibility as a belief.
Well, it just sounds like you have a Pope of the gap.
Asking for help.
He gave a disqualifier. So let's hear this again. Let's slow that down and let's hear this again. This is good. This is important.
Incorporate the compound of head and members. He's doing everything by himself. And if I don't see that, then we don't have evidence of papal supremacy and infallibility as a belief.
Well, it just sounds like you have a
He's doing here that he's not asking for help. Doing things a fixed maximal criteria. Comb, and if you've got this very and yet if you take a fine taught in other words, that's what they decreed, right? Mm-hmm. And yet if you take a fine-tooth comb and if you've got this very fixed maximal criteria, the Pope has to be doing things alone by himself.
Okay, no, he's not giving a disqualifier. I thought he did. No, he's giving Irby's view, and he's saying what's wrong with Irby's view. Here I was hoping he was getting a disqualifier. I thought he was going to go somewhere deep. Yeah, he didn't. All right, back to fast forwarding.
And it has to make it clear that he's not asking for help. He doesn't incorporate the compound of head and members. He's doing everything by himself. And if I don't see that, then we don't have evidence of papal supremacy and infallibility as a belief. Well,
it just sounds like you have a Pope of the gaps argument.
Well, it's...
Again, when Protestants argue like Catholics, when Protestants argue like atheists, when Orthodox argue like atheists, or anti-theists, this is not good.
You believe Vatican I upheld papal supremacy and infallibility based on their words, based on their testimonies.
Well, also based on the fact that they hadn't broken communion with Pius IX after
exactly.
How many years?
So why couldn't I just go into the 5th and 6th century, find all this conciliar machinery, all these conciliar synodal acts, mm-hmm. and with commentary that says that Roman participation has these unique attributes. Mm-hmm. And if those attributes match what Vatican I says about what was given from Christ to Peter, mm-hmm. it seems to me like...
This is my point. This was my point from earlier. This is what I was saying earlier. If I can go back and I can show you them saying what we'll later call the definition of these actions, just like in the Bible, which I didn't say this part earlier, just like in the Bible where we can see a description of the Trinity, but there's no word Trinity. It doesn't mean Trinity doesn't exist. It just means we don't have the word for it yet. So, while I think it's a mistake to define papal infallibility, once we define it, we have a definition and we can go back and say, well, look, here is the definition of papal infallibility, even if the term papal infallibility isn't there. You see what I'm saying? This meets the definition. Therefore, this is what it is. It's present over here before it's been given a term,
Like, my burden is fulfilled.
a descriptor.
That's a very bold claim.
Well, I mean, I can say that I have examples of the Pope acting alone. There are a few.
Well, I mean, does Vatican I say that the Pope can't act alone?
Yes.
Okay, so if I told you that pigs can fly, wouldn't you say, well, show me a pig flying?
I would, but if God told you pigs can fly, do you need an example?
Well, I would need someone to confirm it was God.
Okay, so once it's confirmed, then God says pigs can fly.
I'd say I've never seen one. Can you
But
please show me one?
would you believe it if you know it's God telling you?
I would say I'm having a hard time believing this. Can I see one?
I sympathize.
Could you please
But,
make, a babe fly?
Yeah, I mean,
Wow, he's showing himself to be more and more atheistic. That's interesting. Eric got him right there. I'm not. Look, at this point, I'm kind of leaning toward Eric being the winner of this one. But let's say that I hadn't already started forming that opinion. This right here might push me over to the edge and be like, yeah, he's starting to win. Eric can still lose, by the way. We still got a long way to go. But at this point, 2 hours into a 3-hour debate, I think Eric's winning this thing. Not by a lot, by the way, by a little, but I think he's winning this thing.
that contorts reality. I mean, if we've never seen a pig fly, I understand. But what I'm trying to say,
We've seen one thrown.
yeah, some fall, all that. But here's the thing: if we want an example of a pig flying, you say pigs can fly, show it to me. You say the Pope is infallible, show it to me. But here's the thing: if God, we both agree, if God told you pigs can fly, and it's absolutely certain that God is the one speaking, then you really don't need any more information.
I wouldn't, but I don't believe that the evidence indicates God says that.
Right? Of course not. This is a purely hypothetical
I look
situation.
at Matthew 16:18 as an establishment of the episcopate.
It is. It is, but I also believe it. See, the Catholic Church, like you were talking about, Leo talks about the episcopate is highest. The Catholic Church believes that.
St. Galatius.
Galatius, yeah.
And St. Gregory the Great also says that.
Yep, but we
It's the
believe
highest order, not the highest
we
office.
believe the papacy to be a constituent reality of the episcopate. So we don't have like another layer for the papacy
Why is a papacy not a sacrament?
because the episcopate itself has that constitutional dynamic. So
These are all good points. I feel like Irby does know this, but if Irby doesn't know this, these are all really good points. Either way, like the Ibada's just on a roll now. It took 2 hours for him to get going, but he's on a roll now.
So the only uniqueness about the Pope's position is that physical locale of the Roman Church.
Okay. So in other words, it's just the fact that he's the head of the synod is in itself, in your mind, a proof that a Vatican I.
No, what I'm saying is that he doesn't need to be, there's no sacrament for the papacy because the episcopate itself was created by Jesus with a head and members structure. That head station is permanently stationed in Rome. So whoever gets elected to that see occupies the episcopal dynamic.
Okay, but how does that prove the First Vatican Council?
Well, it doesn't. It just shows why there's no need for a sacrament.
Well, there is still a problem, though, which is Peter founded another church. So you still have to get around that problem. And Irby hasn't even brought this up. If I'm taking this and I'm like, okay, you know what, that's a convincing argument. I still don't agree with you. The very next move from my chessboard is, hey, what about that other church that that Peter founded that nobody pays attention to or cares about? Why isn't that one important? If it's the seat of Saint Peter, what about Antioch? It's exactly what I would do, and Irby's not doing it.
Because I've seen that argument before that the papacy needs a sacrament in order to confer papal infallibility. I've seen it made, I should say.
Well, I've seen Orthodox and Anglicans bring that point up.
I don't find it a convincing argument that the papacy should be a sacrament. I just think it's very interesting. If the papacy's prerogatives,
Which
can
I think
extend
that's part of the problem with this debate when it comes to Irby's side, is that Irby's saying a lot of things that I don't even think he believes. I just think he thinks they're interesting and he wants to see how Eric responds to it. And when I was first watching this yesterday, I thought he was testing him out to see what level he was at. Because I said, like, that's what I did in with my interaction with Big John. I don't even think he's testing him out at this point. I think he's just interested to hear what Ibada has to say. Fair enough.
on those of a patriarch to
It's kind of a waste of time during a debate. You should be trying to win. So,
archbishops, to metropolitans and so forth. I would assume that you would need to break him loose. You would need to break him loose from the. I cannot think with all that noise in the background. That is obnoxious.
I think I know what you're trying.
Not as a joke. There was a channel that I was watching for a long time that I really liked, and eventually the channel just disappeared. And I'm taking from what they're saying that Irby is doing the same thing, which is where the guy had a terrible voice and the guy had a lot of lack of self-confidence, and his voice really wasn't as terrible as he said it was, but he apped it up as if it was terrible. So he wrote the scripts and he did the editing, but he hired an actor. No, he wrote the scripts, then he hired an editor and he hired an actor or voice actor to read his scripts. And so his stuff looked amazing. And then eventually YouTube stopped monetizing his channel, so he ran out of money, so he stopped hiring the voiceover guy, and the quality went down a little bit, but he was still doing good. And then he did a voice reveal at some point, by the way. It was just funny. But when he started doing his own voiceover, it was okay. Once he lost the editor, then everything kind of went bad. But he was still making good points. Like, his writing was still good. He just lost the momentum that he had from the super polished presentation when he went back to a normal presentation or an average presentation. I feel like maybe Irby was doing the same thing, where he had an editor and he had a voice actor do his stuff, but he was writing the scripts. Maybe that's what was going on.
Trying to say though, but I think that
I've never watched
the
his
very
channel,
letter
so I
of
don't know. I'm
14
just guessing.
from Pope Leo, I think, is pertinent to the debate here, because he says that the apostolic pattern of Peter vis-a-vis the apostles serves as a paradigm for the local church, the metropolitan, the patriarch, and then he says no one anywhere should be at odds with the head, with Peter's one universal seat. I just don't know how you can say, and I've heard you say this a number of times, that the Bishop of Rome is simply like the Archbishop of the world.
Well, you've heard him say it, or you've heard the voice actor who he was paying say it. How do you know it's even really Irby? It's conspiracies. Archbishop of the world. I mean, he's the vicar of Christ, but yeah. There's really nothing wrong with saying that. Incorrect, but I mean, patriarch, because he's a metropolitan, he's a patriarch. Why not be an archbishop? I mean, you're just adding another hat. I mean, I don't know. I kind of get where Eric's going with this. He's like, well, you're misunderstanding what the position is. You're misunderstanding the power. You're misunderstanding the authority. It's much greater than what an archbishop would be. Fine. But, I mean, what's one more title? What's one more honorific? Give him another role. It's fine.
You can say it in the same way that it was said in the first millennium.
Right. It was stated, but
add another role to the roles that he already fulfills.
Do you really believe that? Well, what are the privileges of the archbishop vis-a-vis bishops under him?
He can call a synod together. His permission is needed to ratify decisions, to depose
elections,
bishops for elections.
Right.
I mean,
so did Rome have that right in India, Japan, everywhere in the first millennium?
No, but I mean, again, it's the Pope behaves that way towards the patriarchs. The patriarchs behave that way towards the archbishops. In the same way that an archbishop could not go into a metropolitan's jurisdiction and just get rid of it.
Yeah.
There's a
sure. Yeah. But what I'm saying is do you believe the Bishop of Rome ratified the?
I'm thinking about stopping it. Well, not here. Let it go another minute. I'm thinking about stopping it here, and instead of doing a super secret stream, do a third night of this and just bang out the rest of the debate and do it straight through. I think that's what I'm going to do. I think tomorrow night, instead of a super secret stream, we're just going to finish this one. Let's let this get to. Let's let this go a little bit longer. And then when we get to the... Are we at the open? I don't know. We'll see. Where do we want to stop? That's... No, not there. We'll see.
The episcopal elections of patriarchs in such a way that Alexandria can't just choose its own.
No, I do not. And that's a good point that you bring up. No,
so in other words, the archbishop, this whole thing about Rome as the archbishop of the world, I don't think you would admit that the Pope of Rome could call a binding council of the whole church.
Oh, he could in the first millennium.
He could.
Yeah, he's the head. He could go, look, we have to call a council, get together, and he would ratify or reject its.
That's a big admittance. I mean, the debate could be over right there.
But the situation is that he didn't have the money to do it.
Well, here's the thing. An archbishop who calls a synod, if a bishop doesn't show up, he can appeal to apostolic canons to depose if they don't come.
It would have to be the synod that's then called that would
That's
do it.
right.
He would ratify its decision.
Right. So you're saying that you believe, and this is kind of astonishing to me, so I just want to clarify.
Well, I'm occasionally an astonishing person.
but-
Very occasionally, though.
Yeah, you've proved that many years. We've actually known each other for years now that he's come out and shown himself. But anyway,
Well, let's not use the term "come out." It's really quite.
fair enough. So you believe that the Bishop of Rome in the first millennium had the right to convoke an authoritative ecumenical council.
Of course. I mean, how could you? I mean, he'd have a hard time getting people to come because he couldn't bankroll it. But his involvement was needed because he was head of the synod. That's conciliar theory.
Okay. So, in one of your videos, you talk about people being canonically illiterate. There's one video I actually paid attention to where you said people who don't understand the primacy of Rome and Constantinople, Rome and New Rome, in the first millennium, that don't recognize the real jurisdiction of Constantinople and Rome are canonically illiterate. Would you say that the Russian Orthodox Church today, which denies any prerogative to Constantinople, would you say that the Russian Orthodox Church is canonically illiterate?
Some of its theologians seem to be.
How could it be some? These are the decrees that were put out by the Russian Orthodox Church against.
Decrees?
So the response to the Ravenna Statement and the response to the Archbishop L.P. de Forest' defense of it. The ROC on their official website has written a number of articles trying to refute the idea that Constantinople possesses the jurisdiction, even immediate jurisdiction, over anybody.
So I've read their responses, and what appears to be the case is they get hung up on the term primacy. In their view, primacy just means Vatican I.
Kind of like you were getting hung up on the word always.
Okay.
And Russians have this habit of hyper-focusing on something and then just running with it, and they can't be convinced otherwise. So when you read the reason why they don't accept Ravenna, why they don't accept, but then they went on to accept Chieti. I believe they went on to accept Alexandria too, that document. But when you read their reasoning, they're like, there was no primacy. The Pope never was able to, and then they give these examples that are effectively Vatican I.
I've been reading this stuff for years. Who has the time to read all this stuff as it comes out and to stay on top of it and read through all of it? That's amazing. Either you're really wealthy or you're super poor and you're doing nothing but reading these documents. This is amazing. I'm impressed. I'm not making fun of him. I'm honestly impressed. That's a lot of time. That's a lot of effort.
Was never able to do these things, let's say.
Well, here's why I can't accept that. Because in their arguments, they quote Eastern Orthodox canonical commentators like Nicodemus of the Holy Mountain, which I understand. I think in one video you say that Nicodemus got it wrong, right? But Nicodemus of the Holy Mountain, who's a saint, I don't think Balsamon and who's the other guy? What starts Zonoras? I don't think Zonoras and Balsamon or Matthew Chakerites were saints. We got Nicodemus, who is a saint. He says that the right to hear appeals from Canon 9 and 17 in Chalcedon is restricted to Thrace-Asia and the environs of the Patriarchate of Constantinople. Yeah. But the Russian Orthodox Church appealed to that, to say that whatever rights Constantinople has today, it's to the limited Patriarchate of Constantinople, not anywhere else.
Well, I mean, we have St. Augustine saying all things too. Saints are not infallible.
Right, but what I'm trying to say is you made the claim that the Russian Orthodox Church is hung up on the word primacy, but they're not just hung up on the word primacy. In other words, in their minds, it's not just primacy Vatican I.
No, I mean the argument of primacy in terms of like that there was a universal primacy in the first millennium, in the sense of like Rome, they get hung up on that. In terms of like Constantinople having jurisdiction outside of this limited area of Thrace, the Patriarchate.
I have very little to comment here, by the way. They're just arguing. They're actually arguing like friends at this point. They're not even acting like they're in a debate. This is just them talking to each other. Which I think is why I have a temptation just to stop it. Because right now they're not even debating. They're just talking. They're just being friends, disagreeing with each other and having a conversation.
They claim that because right now they're in a power struggle. I mean, this idea that the Russian church is some sort of virtuous entity is preposterous, especially if they've slaughtered so many people in Ukraine. I'm not saying I support this whole Ukrainian church and whatnot, but the way that you handle that situation is through, it's not through bombing people.
Sure.
But I mean, the Russian church right now is in this major, and Constantinople too, in this major dispute over who controls what.
Right. But here's the thing. You have constructed an argument against a lot of things that I've written. And I don't uphold everything I've written in the past, but you've constructed an argument that, hey, you don't need to take Ibarra. I don't uphold everything I've written. You have constructed an argument against a lot of things that I've written, and I don't uphold everything I've written in the past, but you've constructed an argument.
Same. I keep all my videos up, but I don't agree with all my videos anymore. There's a lot of videos in the beginning. I kind of want to do a debunk series of myself from my earlier videos. This will have to be done later in the year if I ever get around to it.
Argument that, hey, you don't need to take Ibarra's hermeneutic in the first millennium. You can take, and we don't need to take those Orthodox who go through the first millennium and just say that Rome was the perfect equal with everybody else.
No, I think that's also preposterous.
Right. So you take this view where you want to have a realistic perspective. You read the data. Rome has authority. Rome has jurisdiction. It has power. These are canonical prerogatives. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you've made the claim that this is very simple. All you got to do is just see the Bishop of Rome as a head of a synod, and he's the universal archbishop over the globe. But the Russian Orthodox Church today, which composes a great voice in the Orthodox spectrum, completely rejects this. Not because they think Constantinople is trying to be equal to Vatican I, but because they think that Canon 9 and 17 of Chalcedon, Canon 3, 4, and 5 of Sardica, and some of the other appellate rights granted to some of the Pan-Orthodox synods in the second millennium, are violated by Constantinople's overreach beyond its own patriarchate.
So what's going on between Russia and Constantinople is that the Russians want to... Constantinople claims that all of those territories outside of the traditional lands of the barbarians includes North and South America. Russia disagrees with that. Russia goes, no, it's whoever settles them first. What's ultimately at play here is money. Because these churches back in the old country, they're broke. They make their money off of milking the American cash cow. No one is arguing about whether or not churches in, say, Congo should be under the ecumenical patriarch of Russia, because Congo doesn't have any money. But I mean, I've lived in Turkey for a while. I've seen how poor these churches are there. It's like, maybe 1,000 elderly Greeks there now. You look at Russia. I mean, Russia's not a wealthy country either. It's very poor. They rely on remittances. Most of Eastern Europe does. And when you have large diasporas, you send money back. I found out recently that just my parish sends over $100,000 a year simply to the Metropolitan in San Francisco. You know, and then from there it goes to the patriarchate.
Right.
I mean, what do you think the archons are?
Yeah.
They're an attempt to keep these churches that maybe there's only one service in them a year, keep them going. They're churches that realistically, it's just forget it.
How are we on time?
We have about
28 minutes.
No, was it 55 minutes?
Let's get back to disagreeing.
Oh my gosh, you agreed.
I think going back to the whole burdens thing, I just want to hear from you. You believe that there's evidence that the Catholic bishops in 1870 upheld papal supremacy and infallibility, not because of any actions they were pointing to, but because of a theological exposition of what Christ did in Peter.
I mean, you have Gasser bringing up historical events. He brings up his 3, I think it was.
But supremacy and infallibility, that the Catholic bishops in 1870, you believe that there's evidence that the Catholic bishops in 1870 upheld papal supremacy and infallibility, not because of any actions they were pointing to, but because of a theological exposition of what Christ did in Peter.
I mean, you have Gasser bringing up historical events. He brings up his 3, I think it was.
But all of those are like synodal issues too.
Well, he just states that it wasn't something that he could point to. He says there's nothing I can really point to, but there's evidence that it was believed.
Right. So, but what I'm saying
One from
is,
the first millennium, 2 from the second.
Do you know any soul in the world today that would doubt that the Catholic bishops of Vatican I upheld supremacy and infallibility?
Not anyone reasonable.
Right. Okay. So, but they didn't need to see an autocratic action.
Well,
to
they
prove that.
saw one in 1848.
Right, but that's something that they believed existed, right? And so the proof that they believed it is simply in that that's what they believed. So why couldn't we just go into the first millennium and look at the theological exposition that the fathers give about the station of Rome?
Because actions speak louder than words.
So you're saying that a theological exposition could be given which specifies equivalent Vatican I claims, but subsequent actions retard it, contradict it,
Or interpret it. Show its application.
Yeah. So in other words, if they make an exposition saying, hey, this is what the Bishop of Rome can do because he's got rights from St. Peter, this is of divine institution, anybody who disagrees with it is an alien to the church. But then if you see a month later, they basically thumb their nose at Rome, well, that means that they just looked at him as a head of the synod and not what they said?
Well, it'd have to be more than they just thumb their... I mean, look at the German bishops doing whatever they want. I wouldn't say that the Catholic Church doesn't believe... Well, I don't know if that's even been resolved or what's going on, but...
It's not.
I mean, you have to have more than just, well, they ignored it and the Pope was then negligent. You have to see a consistent pattern. The thing, though, is that in the second millennium, you have a sort of like Pope creep. So papal creeping, I should say. So slowly, there was an infrastructure built really at the end of the first millennium, and then throughout the second millennium that led up to Vatican I. It's not like the Catholic Church was very conciliar, and then it's not like they followed this conciliar theory, and then...
The first 2 hours of this debate was amazing. The first 2 hours.
The Pope couldn't just come into any bishop's territory and defrock a priest or whatever, and then all of a sudden Vatican I. No, slowly they built up to this. It was the Pope being able to ordain all bishops worldwide, him being able to...
Well, actually, I don't see that any different than what happened with Pope Leo and Chalcedon.
This sort of Pope creep?
Well, no. Leo promotes the power of decision to account...
It's the development of the office. But if there was an initial office, there's always been the office. And if he's always had the ability to be the leader, or he's always been the leader, and he's always been the tiebreaker vote, then he's always been in charge. So we're arguing about semantics because you don't like some decisions that the Pope made, and you don't like some of the actions that were taken in the name of the Pope, even if he disagreed with them and condemned them. It doesn't matter because these people who represent the church, who even though they don't actually represent the church, did some evil things. Therefore, no papacy? That doesn't make any sense, man. I get the argument, but that doesn't make any sense. It's an argument for morality.
Council. So who's making decisions? All the bishops together. And yet he tells them, but you're not allowed to review the contents of the tome.
Revise it, you mean?
Review. He says it's not.
An evil king is still a king.
He says in letter 8.
They can't review it, or they can't revise it?
They can't review it.
Well, they do review it.
Letter 82, which it's Pope Leo's letter to the council, which they read themselves out loud. In that letter, Leo says that you are not, here, I'll just pull it up so that way I'm not going off of memory, but he says, okay, he tells, this is a letter, he says, quote, he says the council is not, quote, to inquire what must be held, as it were, as if it were uncertain.
Part 1 or part 2 of the letter?
Letter 82, so it should be involved.
Is it part 1 or part 2 of the letter?
No, so
All right, guys, I'm starting to fall asleep. We'll do this tomorrow. This was good. I'm going to be very clear. The debate's fine. This is boring. This part right here is boring. They're opening up books and checking each other's understanding of readings they're doing. This is not high flash. This is I'm about to fall asleep. So good night. Let's hear some music. We'll finish this tomorrow. We got about 30 minutes to go. Thank you for those who came on today. Today's not a usual day that I stream, so there probably shouldn't be too many people watching, but I appreciate everyone who did watch. We're going to do this again tomorrow. Instead of a super secret stream, we'll do this, and then we'll follow it up with something fun. Also, I did invite a random viewer / commenter onto my channel to do a debate. We might do that later on next week. We'll see if schedule permits. All right. Good night.
Yeah. Sometimes I get so mad, there's no control in me. My thoughts get so bad, I'm like, I might grab a bat, I don't know. My wrath, my blood boils over like, oh God, here goes. I lost all feeling from my head to my toes. You said some shit that I can't let go, so just stay tuned for the rest of the show. So have you ever felt betrayed? Switches how you see things, realize something needs